Donald Trump doesn't actually want us to have a real conversation about Charlie Kirk. That might sound surprising given how loudly Trump and the MAGA movement have been speaking over the past week, but it's true. What they want is a one-sided narrative that glorifies Kirk and gives Trump cover to push his broader political agenda. But when it comes to discussing what Charlie Kirk truly believed, what he said, or how his legacy is being used, they'd rather we stay silent. And now, breaking news has surfaced linking Trump to the alleged attacker, exposing one of the biggest falsehoods his team has been pushing. This development directly undermines Trump's narrative and highlights how he is using this moment to crack down on free expression. We'll unpack it all for you. But first, if you find value in our work, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep going. Now, before we dive into Bloomberg's new report, I want to start with the core of Trump's strategy around Charlie Kirk: silencing speech. Senator Chris Murphy called it out directly. Take a look.
Last night, they showed us exactly how serious they are. Trump's FCC forced a major network to pull a loud Trump critic, Jimmy Kimmel, off the air, essentially saying that any media actor that doesn't say what Trump wants them to say about Charlie Kirk or Trump's policies is going to be silenced. That's censorship. That's state speech control. That's not America. Trump is making it 100% clear that he is going to ramp up his efforts to use the power of the federal government to harass and punish his critics, not because they're supporters of political violence, they are not, but because they have the audacity to openly oppose his policies. This is a standard format for every budding despot.
This is how we should be responding. If Donald Trump wants to bring up political violence, then he should start by taking real steps to prevent it. That means not pardoning January 6th rioters who assaulted police officers, and not encouraging his supporters to turn their anger toward the left or communities of color. We've already seen how, historically, black universities have been targeted by Charlie Kirk supporters, and how Trump continues to escalate attacks on vulnerable groups, including the trans community. At the same time, figures in right-wing media have crossed dangerous lines. Just recently, Brian Kilmeade made reckless comments about homelessness, comments that were followed by tragic violence at encampments. Why hasn't there been accountability? Why hasn't he been removed from the air? This is the conversation we should be having, and these are the actions that should be called out. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance is busy spinning his narrative, but his words are now being directly challenged by a new report about the alleged attacker. Let's take a closer look.
So the Democrats in the media are preaching unity. They're saying there's an equal amount of violence on both sides, and we need to all just lower the temperature and come together. You say?
It's statistically absolutely bonkers. The idea that left-wing violence and right-wing violence in 2025 in America are equal, it's preposterous. The statistics don't bear it out, Jesse. You ask what percentage of political liberals believe that political violence is sometimes justified? It's about 1 in 4. If you ask young conservatives that same question, it's about 1 in 25, which, by the way, is still too high.
Right.
It should be 0, but the problem is much bigger and much more malignant on the far left. I saw something, maybe it was the ADL or one of these ridiculous organizations that said that right-wing violence is as common as left-wing violence. And then you go and look at the data and you say, what is it that you're causing right-wing violence? One of the things that they called right-wing violence is literally a gang of black Americans beating up on a Mexican guy. Well, yeah, if you categorize everything under the sun as right-wing violence, you can make your point for you, but that's BS. Nobody's buying it. Look at the way they're celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. Look at the way that this assassin was radicalized by left-wing and probably trans-related stuff. Look at the way that even if you're not committing an act of violence, you are supporting those who do. You see that so much more on the far left, and I wish my friends who are on the left would just look themselves in the mirror and accept that they have a problem. Yes, absolutely. By all means, let's take down the temperature. But if you want to take down the temperature and you're on the left of center, the first and most important thing you can do is look in the mirror.
This is why they want us quiet. Again, I know it seems like all they want to do is talk about Charlie Kirk, but they're not actually talking about Charlie Kirk. They're talking about exploiting his death. They're talking with these fake statistics, these false narratives, saying that the alleged assailant was some left-wing radicalized by I don't know what. Rachel Maddow. If the left could radicalize people so much so to carry out these actions, I think we would have radicalized people enough to turn out and vote for Vice President Harris, which I think the country has now realized. Maybe you guys should have done. But the real truth behind the political ideology of this alleged assailant, while it is still becoming more clear every day, certainly is not in the mold that J.D. Vance has tried to make, because we have a new report out of Bloomberg that just shows this was not someone who hated Donald Trump. Charlie Kirk killer Tyler Robinson used Donald Trump as gaming alias on stream. Bloomberg, the young man who was playing video games, constantly used his gamer tag, or the name he went by in games, as Donald Trump. That was his chosen alias. Now, personally, I strongly disagree with Donald Trump, and I certainly wouldn't want anything associated with him, even as a joke, but that's exactly what this kid picked. And yet, despite everything, he used that name consistently. There was nothing negative or mocking about it. It wasn't an image or a message insulting Trump. It was simply the name itself. We don't know how he voted, and it appears he may not have voted at all. He was registered as an independent, and it's important to be clear about that. Some stories have tried to claim he was a registered Republican, but that seems to refer to a different individual with the same name. We need to be honest and stick to the facts. What we do know is that he grew up in a family that leaned strongly MAGA. His grandmother openly said she didn't know a single Democrat. That context is important, and it cannot be ignored. Meanwhile, some are trying to use this situation to push misleading narratives, focusing on attacks against people of color or trans communities while misrepresenting who Charlie Kirk really was. If you want to understand Charlie Kirk, the best source is Charlie Kirk himself, something J.D. Vance clearly did not do, as we can see in these clips.
The writer accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, "Black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously." But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words.
If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
How can anyone ask a black woman or any self-respecting person who is not prejudiced to say, well, Charlie Kirk was at least in the arena. He was having conversations? That isn't a conversation. This was about promoting bigotry, attacking black women, targeting trans people, and encouraging supporters to harass people simply doing their jobs. Think about it. How many black pilots, for example, had to endure harassment every day while working hard to keep us safe? How many people felt they had permission to harass colleagues in the workplace because of Charlie Kirk's rhetoric? This is not politics or debate. This is animating the worst behaviors in people, and often for profit. The success of the movement may be praised, but at its core, this was always about money and self-interest. Even after his passing, we see fundraising emails from his widow, showing that profit continues to be a focus. We cannot accept fake apologies or superficial condemnation. This is a serious issue. And yes, we condemn political violence and gun violence, but we don't need to spin it in empty statements. Unlike some, I have never supported or pardoned insurrectionists or cheered on violence. The record is clear. What we are facing now is an attempt by Donald Trump to silence voices that challenge him. And as Greg Kazar pointed out, we must call this out.
Let's just say it plain and simple. President Trump is abusing the vast powers of the federal government to shut down people who dare disagree with him. From universities to law firms to nonprofits to journalists, Trump is abusing his power and violating the First Amendment daily to punish anyone who does not line up behind his agenda. That would be wrong no matter which party did it, no matter who the president was. So I'm thankful to my colleagues who are putting together this legislation to protect churches and nonprofits, newspapers, magazines, colleges, workers, students from any president who tries to target his political opponents, shred our Constitution, and disgrace our values in the process. We are in the biggest free speech crisis this country has faced since the McCarthy era. The murder of Charlie Kirk was a horrific crime, and it's clear that Trump wants to hijack that horrific crime to silence anyone who disagrees with the president about any issue.
The goal of these efforts is clear. They want to silence us. That's why we cannot stay quiet. We have to keep speaking out, and I will continue to do so on this show every single day. If you want to support that work, you can hit the subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you've watched to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.